top 5 DAX functions? Don't miss this video to learn about the essential DAX functions you need to know to extend your DAX skills to the next level.
Hello everyone, Shab is back with another interesting tutorial. Today I'm going to talk about the top DAX functions in Power BI that you should know. If it's the first time you're watching my videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to get the notification for the new upcoming videos. Stay tuned.
When you're starting to work with Power BI, you will understand little by little that you need to learn some DAX skills and improve it to handle more and more calculations. Today I am going to talk about the top 5 DAX functions that all beginners should know about. These functions are very easy but important as well, because you will use them on a daily basis. The first function that you should learn is count. The count function helps you to count the number of records in a column, for example, number of sold products. In this sample on the left table, you can see different sales information on different dates. Now assume that we want to count the number of orders in different months and years and show the values in the right table. And so from here I create a measure. And then choose a name for it, like orders count. And then put an equal sign. Here we should write our function, which is count, and then open parentheses. In this example, we need to count the sales order numbers on the left table. So write sales order number, which comes from the fact sales table. Close parentheses and press on enter or this check mark to apply the measure. Now I first select this table and choose the created measure to add it to this table's data field. As you can see, we have the number of orders in different months and years. In many cases, you need to count the values in a column which has duplicates, and those values are not distinct. So, in this case, you need to use distinct count function instead of the count function, not to consider the repeated values. The next function I am going to talk about is sum. Sum is a common DAX function we are using to sum the values of a column like sales amount. In our example, you can see sales quantity on the left table, and now we want to see how many products were sold on different dates. So we need to first create a measure, and then name it something like sold products. Now write sum function and open parentheses. Here we should define the column we need to sum its values. For our aim, we are using sales quantity from fact sales table. Close the parentheses and apply the measure. If I select the created measure and drag it to this table data field, then you can see the next column, which shows the sum of all product sales. The third essential function is divide, which we use to divide the values. For example, in this left table you can see the sales amount is the difference between the unit price and discount amount, and then multiply it by the sales quantity. But what we want to calculate is finding out the final sale price per sold unit. So we need to divide the sales amount into sales quantity. So let's create a measure and name it as unit sale, and put an equal sign. The same as all mathematical functions, you can insert the first column, which is sales amount, and then the division sign or slash, and then the second column, which is sales quantity. But I recommend using divide function which I'll describe in a second, not the divide operator or slash. Using divide function is recommended whenever the denominator is an expression that could return 0 or blank. In the case that the denominator is a constant value, we recommend that you use the divide operator. In this case, the division is guaranteed to succeed, and your expression will perform better because it will avoid unnecessary testing. So, delete these codes and instead write divide, and inside parentheses write the numerator, which is sales amount. Put a comma, and then denominator, which is sales quantity. When finished, apply the measure. If I drag this measure into this table, you can see the unit sales for each product. Next important function is if function. This function helps you to use a logical condition and return a value if the condition is true or false. In this example, I want to create a flag column to show in which month the order count passed 10,000 and in which month failed to reach the target. So I create a measure and name it as sale flag and put an equal sign. Now we need to use the if function, and after the parentheses, we need to define the condition. So our condition is when order count is greater than 10,000. Here you can use the count function again to count the sales order number, or use the previously created measure. I prefer to use the order count measure and then the condition, which should be more than 10,000. Now we need to put a comma and define the result if our condition is satisfied. So inside double quotations, I write pass, and then put a comma and define what should be returned if the condition is false. So inside double quotation marks, I write fail, and then close the parentheses at the end and apply the measure. Now if I select this measure to bring into this table, you can see when the order counts are more than 10k, it shows pass, and when it is less than 10k, it shows fail. Let's talk about the last necessary function. If I go to the table view and select the dim product, you can see here we have different product categories like audio, music, and computers. Now in this dashboard, you can see a slicer on top, which helps us to slice and dice the values. Below we have two card visuals. I drag the created measure, order count, into the first card. Now you can see if I press on each of these categories on the slicer, the values will be filtered just for those specific ones. Now, what can I do if I want to apply this filter in our DAX function? For example, I want to show the count of orders only for the music category on this visual, not the other categories. So create a measure and write music orders and an equal sign. Then we need to use the calculate function and open parentheses. If I press on Shift and Enter, our cursor will go to the next line and helps us to write a clean and tidy code. Then we need to define the expression. Here we can write distinct count of the sales order number and then put a comma and go to the next line. Here is where we can define filters. You can define the first filter, then put a comma and then the next filter. In this way you can use as many filters as you like. In our case, we want to choose product category name, which should be equal to music. If I apply the measure and drag it into the second card visual, you can see the music order counts. Now you can see if I press on the music category slicer, the values of both cards will be equal. These are the top 5 DAX functions that you have to know because you will deal with them every day. There are a lot more functions are also available to learn, and we'll try to cover in the next videos.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and share it, and subscribe to the channel to get the notification for the new upcoming videos. Have a good one, all Power BI.